Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So following Deontay Wilders' 11th round brutal knockout loss to Tyson Fury this past weekend, many people are speculating on his future in the sport of boxing. Some people say after the two back-to-back defeats to Tyson Fury, and given the nature of those defeats, taking a lot of punishment, that he should retire, and others are saying that no, he's still got some life left in him, there are still some great fights to make, and that he should continue. And ultimately, I do kind of lean towards the second option. I believe personally Deontay Wilder should continue fighting. I do believe he's got some great fights out there still, and potentially winnable fights. Of course, given those two fights back to back, there will be some questions in regards to Deontay Wilder's future. In particular, that third fight with Tyson Fury was long, it was drawn out, and he took a lot of punishment and got knocked out quite badly towards the end. So, there's always going to be the question mark on his return if he's the same fighter physically and mentally. To be honest, mentally, I don't really believe Deontay Wilder will change. I do believe he's got great self-belief, almost to a delusional sense, but maybe that could actually help him on a potential comeback. Many fighters, after suffering those two defeats back to back, and given the nature of those defeats, many fighters would capitulate and not really be the same sort of guy or have any real success. But I do believe Deontay Wilder has the mental toughness, I guess you would say, to come back and actually make some waves again. But obviously physically, we will only find out until we see this guy in the ring again. But when you look at Deontay Wilder, he's had 40 odd fights, 43, 44 fights, whatever it is, and ultimately he still only has lost to one man, and that is Tyson Fury. Yeah, we can kind of speculate in regards to his level of competition, but still, he's only lost to Tyson Fury, and he's over at the PBC. And for me personally, he certainly has some good options, in my opinion. Obviously, if he were to come back, I'm sure he would take like a regular comeback fight / a tune-up fight. If that does happen, it can't be anybody too weak, but at the same time, he's not going to fight a top 5 heavyweight, an absolute killer. So if I was looking at Deontay Wilder and he wanted to come back, I was managing him, whatever, I would be looking at somebody like either Robert Helenius or Charles Martin. Ideally Robert Helenius. I think right now Robert Helenius is more credible than Charles Martin. Robert Helenius, of course, coming off 2 wins over Adam Kalnacki and having a resurgence in his career. But ultimately, while Robert Helenius is now credible again and he is somewhat dangerous, he's extremely beatable. His chin isn't the greatest, his gas tank isn't the greatest, and, he is kind of open and a little bit sloppy at times. So I believe somebody like Robert Helenius could be a perfect comeback opponent for Deontay Wilder, because Helenius could test Deontay Wilder, could give him a few problems, but ultimately he is there to be knocked out again. I think Robert Helenius would be the ideal comeback opponent for Deontay Wilder, and it is a fight that is... It does have some intrigue, because if Deontay Wilder is done physically, then maybe someone like Robert Helenius would find that out. I think Helenius would answer a lot of questions in regards to where Deontay Wilder is at right now in his career, and ultimately that's who I would have Deontay Wilder fight if I was managing him or promoting him on his comeback. I would say Robert Helenius, failing that Charles Martin, and providing that he wins that sort of comeback fight. After that, given that Deontay Wilder is 35 years old, 36 years old nearly, providing he wins his comeback fight, I would chuck him in the relative deep end again, and I would say chuck Deontay Wilder in there with Andy Ruiz. I think that fight would be extremely interesting stylistically. Andy Ruiz, quick hands, very good up close, good combination puncher up close. But on the flip side, he is a much shorter man. He's got slow feet, and Deontay Wilder obviously has the height and reach advantage. I think if you put those two guys together, it would make for a very exciting fight. And, both guys still have name value. I think that fight would do very well in the USA in terms of numbers and selling out and whatnot. And it's a competitive fight right now. Andy Ruiz, former heavyweight champion, obviously shocked Anthony Joshua back in 2019. He lost for rematch in disappointing fashion, and most recently, he had a suspect performance against Chris Arreola. I think right now, those two guys are made for each other, Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz. And ultimately, that's the sort of fight where if Deontay Wilder took that fight and won, I would imagine that he would be very highly ranked at that point, and who knows, maybe on the verge of another title shot. When you look at it in reality, yeah, those two defeats to Tyson Fury were extremely bad, but another title shot could be 2 or 3 fights away if he's matched correctly, and ultimately, I do believe it's perfectly achievable. I do believe Deontay Wilder, providing he's not physically damaged, I believe he beats Robert Helenius, and I would believe he would have a very good chance against someone like Andy Ruiz. If he could beat those two guys back to back, then he's right back in the mix. And ultimately, as much as I don't like what Deontay Wilder stands for, I don't like his hardcore fan base, and quite frankly, as an individual, I don't really like him. But that's besides the point. Given what he showed me in that third Tyson Fury fight, the heart he showed, the excitement he provided, I certainly want Deontay Wilder to continue his career in the heavyweight division. Ultimately, there's many great fights out there for him. Let's say Anthony Joshua loses again to Alexander Usyk. I don't care, man. Joshua could be coming off 2 back-to-back defeats to Usyk, and Wilder's coming off 2 back-to-back defeats to fucking Fury. I would still watch those guys fight, coming off 2 back-to-back losses. I'd still watch those guys fight. I'd still pay for it. It's a great fight. There are still exciting fights out there for Deontay Wilder, and many of these fights, in my opinion, are winnable. I don't believe Deontay can beat Tyson Fury. We've seen that. I don't believe Deontay Wilder stylistically can beat Alexander Usyk, but when you look at the division outside of Fury and Usyk, I don't really believe there's a fight there that Deontay Wilder has no chance in. I'm not saying he would beat all of the other guys. I'm not really saying that, but if he's still in and around his best and he's not, taking too much damage, I believe he would have a legitimate chance against most of the top guys in the heavyweight division, excluding Usyk and Fury. So, listen, there are a lot of people out there saying Wilder needs to retire, etc., but I don't really see it that way. I would like to see Deontay Wilder try and have one more run and see what he can do. I think he needs to humble himself, to be honest, and realise what went wrong in those Fury fights. And I believe he needs to take more responsibility in general for the way his career has panned out in the last 18 months or so. But ultimately, even if he doesn't do that, I still believe he's an exciting watch in the heavyweight division. And ultimately, again, for better or worse, whether you like Wilder, dislike him, etc., his type of punching power is always going to make his fights intriguing. So, yeah, I'm all for seeing Deontay Wilder continue his career. And like I said, I've got fights in mind I would like to see him take. Helenius on a comeback, then Andy Ruiz in a big fight. Why not? Why the fuck not? What about Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder? Let's say Dillian Whyte fights Fury and loses. Why not have Whyte versus Wilder? That's another great fight, when it comes to the heavyweight division, we've become so fixated on Undisputed and these big title fights, but we forget there are many other great fights outside the big title fights. There are many great fights to make in the heavyweight division, not just including Deontay Wilder, but a lot of these contenders need to fight each other, and I think with Deontay Wilder in that mix, it just makes it a lot more entertaining and a lot more engaging for me as a fan. So, yeah, that's my opinion on Wilder and his future. I do believe he's got something to offer. I do believe he needs to make one more run to see where he can go. And yeah, that's how I see the situation. What about you guys? Do you see a future for Deontay Wilder? Do you believe he can beat some top contenders? Can he go anywhere after these 2 defeats? Or do you believe he should retire? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this particular topic. Anyway, it's been your guy Delboy. Peace out.